So hello, you wonderful citizen of the internet, and welcome to a bit of a waffle about microdosing and everything I have learned in the past 2 or so months of microdosing shrooms. I've taken some today, so this might be a bit of a sort of video because as you will learn, microdosing has not really been the greatest thing for me. There are certain types of people who really should not, I don't think, try microdosing and who are not going to get on with it, and I am one of those people. But the things I want to talk about in this video, I've learned that you can't generalize shrooms. Like, strains are completely different to each other, and I want to talk about the different strains that I've tried over the course of this and how different they were. I used to think like a shroom was a shroom and you could just generalize it, and no. Just the same as you can't generalize like weed with like an indica experience versus a sativa experience is going to be completely different. Same with shrooms. So I learned that. I've also learned a lot about trip stoppers and like can you still trip if you're on prescription trip stoppers, which I am, as in both types. Like, I'm on Abilify, which is I think classified as an antipsychotic. It's like an antidepressant antipsychotic weird mixture thing, but I'm also on benzos, so I'm on like both things that people take for trip stoppers, and it's like, well, can you still trip with those? The answer seems to be yeah, you kind of can, but with some alterations to the experience. And yeah, I guess the other thing to talk about is the pros and cons that have come with microdosing. So to get to, I guess, the good stuff first, this experience has, as I say, taught me a lot about different strains, and it's prepared me for actual trips on those strains a lot better. That I think if you get a new strain of mushrooms, or even just like a new batch of some kind of shroom, I think it's quite a good idea to try microdosing that stuff first before you just go like balls to the wall and trip on it, because you don't really know what you're getting. They can be so different, the strains. You don't know if you're going to get one that's like really, really sedating. As one I tried was really sedating, and mostly it was kind of sitting there with my eyes closed and just drifting into other dimensions. It was almost like ketamine. Whereas another strain, the one that I've taken more, has been like really quite upbeat and energetic and manic and giggly. And then of course there was the strain that I took like the first time when I was only about 19, 20, which had this hellish body load, and that put me off doing shrooms for like so many years. Although I continued to do them, I only ever did them after doing Molly to keep things positive and to cut down the body load. But yeah, so the different strains, I think if you get a new batch and you try microdosing it first, you can kind of get to understand, okay, this is what this type of shroom's personality is. This is what it's going to be like. And therefore you can plan the activities you're going to do when you finally trip properly on that batch. If that's your intention, to trip properly on that batch, you can at least like align the intention and align the activities with what that shroom is going to be good for. Because, you know, if you're going to be on a really sedating type, you don't really want to go, oh, let's go to the woods and be stranded in the woods for like 8 hours, planning to like walk around and, you know, do loads of like upbeat activities. If you're on a really sedating type, you're not going to want that. Similarly, if you're on a really energetic type, you're probably not going to want to be like, oh, let's just do some shrooms and sit in a bedroom and watch cartoons kind of thing. You're going to go mad. So it does seem to really kind of teach you the personality before you launch into tripping, and I found that so helpful. So since doing this, I have had quite a few like actual trips on these things, all been a lovely time. So that's kind of the positive side of it. The negative side of it has been, well, really what I've just said, in that my intention, obviously, as I say, my intention was microdosing, right? My intention was, would just take a little bit of this, like a little supplement or a little medication, and I'll get more creativity out of it. I'll maybe have more energy, less brain fog, you know, just all these benefits that people talk about with microdosing, you know, less depression, just, you know, thinking about, you know, thinking your way out of problems, being more of a creative problem solver, being more creative generally, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff I was hoping for. And where it kind of went wrong for me was that the first capsule I took hit me way harder than I anticipated. Like I was thinking, I'll take this, I will barely notice it. And because I'd sort of slithered into the mushroom sphere again by first of all trying out lion's mane. Like I was on TikTok and everyone was banging on about lion's mane and how good it is for brain fog. Like this is not a magic mushroom. This is just like a mushroom that people are talking about, like a nootropic. It's kind of like good for brain fog. It helps your cognition, your memory, and all this shit. And I say shit because it did nothing for me. I tried lion's mane. I went up to a really quite high dose of lion's mane. Ugh, no effects whatsoever. So after this experience, I was kind of like, well, my brain seems to be fairly impervious to this shit. So if I start microdosing, probably it's going to be maybe something that I don't notice at first, and it just turns out to be like a bit of a slow burn, and I gradually notice I'm less depressed, and I gradually notice I'm more creative. That's what I was expecting. What I got was that, like, say, the first capsule hit me really hard, and it was kind of like, oh, the colours, oh, I feel weird, oh, I feel manic, I feel bouncy, I feel like I'm coming up on something, oh, my skin feels nice, oh, this is, so, so I got kind of like a low-level trip off it, basically, and I was like vaping weed because I was like, this is great, let's like push this further, this is great, I'm loving this. So I got absolutely fuck all productive done the first day I microdosed. I actually planned to vlog it, I did, I was like, I'm going to vlog this just in case it goes a bit weird. But in the end, it hit me so hard I couldn't really do words or be in front of a camera. It was all a bit like it was enjoyable, but I couldn't function on it. So that's how hard the first capsule hit me. So it wasn't really what I was looking for, but it was really fun. And I do have a very addictive personality. If there is anything around me in a 10-mile radius that is fun, I will get addicted to it. That is just my personality and has been my personality all my life. I have been addicted to everything on the planet. I feel like that you can get addicted to, besides gambling and sex, really, are about the only two things that I don't see really like enough instant appeal with. But everything else that's pleasurable at some point, I've basically been addicted to it. So this finding shrooms too pleasurable as a microdosing thing, it did kind of like tickle my little addict brain a little bit. But I didn't think it would be a bad thing at first. I thought, oh, well, this was great. This was a really fun day. I get to do this every other day, seriously, because the dosing schedule I'd looked up was like take one every other day for like a week or 2 weeks, take a week off, continue. So I was like, this is fucking wicked. Every other day I can just have a brilliant day bouncing around the room, just being like out of it and having a lovely time. This is going to be great. So 2 days later I took another capsule. All my expectations were up, and I was like, this is going to be great. Obviously, you're only taking a tiny bit. Tolerance builds incredibly fast when it comes to this tiny capsule. So I felt nothing. The second day I took it, nothing. And I was like, shit. So me being me with my addict brain, I was like, well, take some more. Obviously, take some more. So this is how it kind of turned into like building up and going, oh, this was nice. Let's do more. Let's build up to like a proper trip repeatedly. So as far as like experiencing it like a microdose, I've only really done that kind of 2 or 3 times. I'm kind of getting back into it more so now, partly because my stash of capsules is running low, but also just because I've kind of tripped on this stuff enough times now that it's like, yeah, that's fun, but I would actually like to be more productive on this now. So it's kind of pulling back the dosage now to a point where I can kind of function on it and feel a bit more creative. I still don't think I ever see myself really taking like a standard microdose though, because I just don't, if I don't feel it in some way, I don't see the fucking point. So although I don't want to necessarily take a huge amount all the time, I want to feel it enough that it's like, oh, there's the creativity kick, there's the talkativeness kick, I'm going to start doing things productively now is kind of how I feel. So I tend to take like 3 or 5 or 6 microdosing capsules on a day. I want to microdose depending where my tolerance is at that point and depending how long it's been since I last took some. So that's kind of where I'm at with the microdosing now. But yeah, literally for the past like 2 or so months, it's just been tripping really too frequently for any kind of logic, really. Which brings me to the whole thing about trip stoppers and whether you can trip on a kind of trip stopping medication. So obviously, like say, have been tripping on these things. So yes, I would say you can trip if you are prescribed a trip stopper medication. What it seems to stop, though, is the psychedelic thoughts. So you get the visuals, you get the body feelings, you get the brain feelings, you get the euphoria, you get all of these things. You just don't get the brain fuck. So in that way, it's kind of a lot like, almost like taking it with Molly anyway, whereby Molly would cut down on the mind fuck and would cut down on the negativity and all of this. And to be honest, my favorite hallucinogen back in the day was always like 2C compounds, like 2CB, 2CE, because I found they were very visual, they were very giggly, they were very stimulating, no mind fuck. And that was always my favorite. And that kind of seems to be what you get if shrooms are around with trip stoppers. However, the downside of that is that really that's the benefit of mushrooms. That is the true benefit of mushrooms, is the psychedelic thinking and the deep thinking and the thinking through your problems and going, is what I'm doing really productive for me? Like if I have a problem and you go into a trip and you want to work on that problem, well, you can't really do that if you're on trip stoppers, because you don't get any depth of thought, you don't get any of that stuff going on. So you don't learn any lessons, you don't learn anything from shrooms if you're taking them with trip stoppers, which I think obviously then is more conducive to taking them in a negative kind of addictive manner, because they're not self-regulating anymore. Usually if you abuse some kind of hallucinogen, you try and take it too often, it will come at you. Like it will come at you with some kind of message that's like, no, don't do this. This is grimy and dirty and you shouldn't be doing this. And, we are like a pure innocent molecule and you are abusing us and blah, blah, blah. I've had these weird kind of messages from hallucinogens before when I've taken them too frequently, and it's just showed me just icky things that have made me think, no, I'm going to put this down for a while. You don't get that, because the trip stoppers are keeping the voice of the shrooms out of your brain kind of thing. Because trip stoppers, particularly like ones like Abilify, which is like an antipsychotic, they're designed to keep psychotic thoughts out of your brain. And obviously psychedelic thoughts are pretty much psychotic thoughts. So you don't get that balancing effect. It's not gonna rein itself in for you. So that's not so good. Obviously, I think having trip stoppers around, if you're going to be tripping, I do think is a really good idea, particularly if you are kind of like an anxious person or an anxious tripper, or you have a lot of trauma in your past that might come up while you're tripping. I think having trip stoppers around, even if you don't take them, even if you never end up taking them, I think just knowing that you have some element of control over the experience. I know like the real psychonauts out there will be like, you have to surrender completely to the experience. In an ideal world, yes. But I think for people who are a bit anxious and a bit control freaky like me, I think you're better at surrendering to the experience if you know you can switch it off. Like if you know, if this gets completely intolerable and I can't hack it, I can switch it off, you can surrender. Whereas if you're like, I'm on this train now for the next 8 hours and there's nothing I can do about it, you just get stuck in a mind loop about there's nothing I can do about it, there's nothing I can do about it, and of course it goes in a negative direction. Whereas having trip stoppers around, I think prevents that, because you just know you've got a soft landing kind of thing. The other thing I have found really, really, really useful, and that I wish I'd known back when I was kind of tripping as a youngster, I wish I'd known about how useful like chewy candy, particularly sour candy, is when you're tripping in some kind of way. Like I actually had this pop up on TikTok that sour candy is really good for anxiety because it's like distracts all your senses. I think with tripping, if it gets too intense, particularly on a very stimulating strain, so having some kind of candy around that you can just and just munch it seems to be like the only way to stay sane sometimes. So at this point, I kind of always have some kind of something around the place so that if it's needed, I can just gorge myself on this stuff. And obviously, like I've learned so much more than when I was tripping as a youngster. That obviously the whole set and setting thing. That if things are getting a little bit weird, or you're just any kind of uncomfortable, even if you're not like freaking out. Obviously, a freak out comes from somewhere. It comes from this first seed of uncomfortability. That's not even a word, but you know what I mean. That first seed of like, something feels off, and then it builds and builds and builds. So if you can immediately take that something feels off feeling, and you can change the music, you can go sit somewhere else, you can go outside, you can go inside, you can phones. Oh my God. Like, obviously, when I was tripping back in 2005, I didn't even have my own computer at that point in my room. So when I would come home from things and I'd still be high, like, I had nothing to entertain me apart from literally my CD player. So obviously the overthinking, I could get into like a big head spin about all this stuff because there was nothing to entertain me. Whereas now we're in the year 2023, you've got your phone and you've got the whole fucking world on your phone. You know, you've got Facebook, you've got Netflix, you've got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got, you know, you can make voice memos, you can record songs, you can do everything on your phone. So having this around, although again, the real psychonauts will be like, you should be out in nature having a real experience and surrendering and all of this. And it's like say, you don't get psychedelic thoughts when you're on a trip stopper. So all of that stuff, yes, it's pretty to be out in nature. And some of the coolest visuals I've had have been out in nature when there's been like some clouds are always the thing for me on like when I'm tripping on anything. Clouds, I love them. They're just fucking huge and majestic and amazing. So being outside and seeing clouds and the way you see the wisps kind of coming down, it's like they're reaching out towards you, it's fucking amazing. So yeah, being outside in nature while you're tripping is very cool. But if you're on trip stoppers and you don't get the psychedelic thoughts, eventually you get bored. Like eventually it's like, oh yeah, this looks very cool, I'm enjoying the music and I'm blah. But you're not getting the psychedelic thoughts. You're not going deep into the like, ooh, have some thoughts, go down a thought rabbit hole. Doesn't happen. So having something to distract you and something to do is quite useful. I feel like if you're tripping on trip stoppers, I've had a lovely fucking time with all of this. It just hasn't really been microdosing, and it's been way too frequent to be any kind of sensible, really. So to get onto the kind of the strains thing, the first strain I ever took, and the one that was the trip that kind of cured my eating disorder in a single day, but was a horrible, horrible, horrible experience that I would never want to repeat. That I still remember. This was in 2005, and I still vividly remember that strain was Golden Teachers, which I bought in Amsterdam. And literally the reason I chose those ones, because, this was Amsterdam when like shrooms were still completely legal there, and you could go and you could buy any type of shrooms you wanted, and they were all in boxes and they were all labeled and everything. So I had like this range of shrooms I could have taken, and I didn't really know anything about them or what to take. And I saw the word Golden Teachers and I thought, oh, they sound really nice. They sound friendly. What the fuck are you talking about? Golden Teachers are not friendly, in my opinion. Golden Teachers they're teachers. They will teach you, but like they're all about that. They are not good time mushrooms at all, and they are not intended to be. And they're not teachers who are kind. They're not going to teach you in a really like hippy dippy, fluffy Wiccan kind of way. From my experiences with Golden Teachers, if they're going to teach you stuff, they're going to do it in this brutal way. They are going to hold this big dark mirror up to your soul, and you are going to see all your flaws in this brutal way that you can't ignore. It forces change. It's like, what crystal is it that people have been talking about on TikTok? Is it moldavite or malachite or something? Moldavite, I think. This crystal that supposedly you buy it, and basically anything that is in your life that is troublesome will just blow up in your face, and your whole life will fall apart, and if you survive it, you will end up in a better place. That kind of energy is exactly the energy of Golden Teachers. That you will not be able to stand yourself after a trip on Golden Teachers. You will not be able to stand the things in your life that you shouldn't be doing. So it forces change, but in the most brutal, brutal, brutal way that I feel like is so brutal. It's something that I like I say, I did it once, cured my eating disorder, was brilliant, but I wouldn't want to do that again. So the strain, ironically, the strain that I first ended up trying as microdosing was a hybrid strain, which is called white Golden Teachers. That's what I tried. So they are a hybrid of Golden Teachers and a strain called albino penis envy, believe it or not. So these ones, they're kind of half Golden Teacher and half albino penis envy. And it's very interesting because I tried pure albino penis envy further down the road with this microdosing journey, and I found that actually penis envy on its own, it's a weird thing to keep saying, they were very sedating. Actually, albino penis envy on its own, it was a very sedating experience. It was very much like, yeah, you're just kind of forced to close your eyes, float off into another dimension. It's almost ketamine-like, but more visual, more kind of astral projection-y, very, very cool, but very internal, like a very internal experience, not so much like, oh, let's go out and look at stuff. It was very internal. But the interesting thing is that hybridizing this strain with golden teachers and making white golden teachers, the white golden teacher strain actually is the very manic one, the very energetic one, very upbeat, very giggly, lots of like looking at colors and stuff. But when I first started taking this as a microdose, it was like I could still feel the golden teacher's element of this mushroom spirit. Like it would start being very giggly and very upbeat and very, very lovely, and it would be fine. But towards the end of the experience, like the golden teacher element would come out, and suddenly it would feel like there was this very stern, almost like scornful, impatient energy in the room with me. And sorry, this is a very weird way to put it, but that I don't know how else to describe it apart from feeling like that there was this vibe of like someone who was very impatient and who didn't like me much, kind of peering over my shoulder and being scornful about everything I was doing. And I was like, I recognize this energy. This is the energy of golden teachers. I remember this from 2005, and it's, you know, it wants to teach you stuff. It wants to guide you around, and I did find that it was kind of guiding me around, and it was guiding me to kind of towards meditation and towards kind of meditative activities, and it did seem like quite a beneficial energy, but I fucking hated how it felt. It felt so judgmental, and it felt so unpleasant that I kind of shied away from leaning into that energy. And weirdly, that energy seems to have just dissipated now. It's as though this kind of golden teacher spirit energy of the shroom has just given up on me and gone, you know what, no, ain't no fixing you, I'm off. So these days, if I take kind of white golden teachers, all I get is the kind of the upbeat bubbly stuff, and maybe that is more chemical than that. Maybe it's just a matter of tolerance, and that you don't get that bit anymore. You kind of get more used to it, and that bit goes away. But I've always felt that drugs very much have personalities, and they you know, so I mean, some people say about everything being sentient and drugs being sentient beings or sentient energies, life forces, whatever you want to call them, and that you are having an experience with this kind of sentient energy. And I don't know that I'd take it that far, but I do feel pretty much that way. I do feel that, yes, all drugs have a personality, and it tends to come out in the culture that surrounds that drug when humans start doing it. You know, you think about alcohol having a very definite, very loud, boozy, obnoxious culture. You think about weed having this very kind of chill, kind of fun, stonery, gigglery culture. All drugs end up with a culture that is kind of built from that drug itself. Although at the same time, I do feel that some drugs are misunderstood and are so weird. This is a weird ramble. Some drugs are misunderstood and are forced into a culture that is not necessarily a fair representation of that drug simply by the situation they're put in, like the war on drugs. So there's a whole subject that is a tangent. But yeah, the different personalities of different shroom strains, I guess is the point I'm getting at, is very, very interesting. And this is why I do think the major benefit for me so far of microdosing has been in being able to trip again, because I've like crept up to it in this very timid mouse-like way and just tried like little bits of each strain and gone, okay, so what is your personality like? What, you know, it's like having a Skype date with the shroom rather than diving into full sex straight away. You know, you get to check them out, work out their personality. Do you vibe with it? Do you like it? What are you going to do with this person? And then you can up it to an actual trip once you're kind of used to it, and then you have a good time, and it ups your ratio of success of having a decent time on shrooms so much. Obviously not everyone is out there to have a decent time on shrooms. A lot of people are out there to be, you know, pulverized by the drug and to come out different, you know, to go in there with their problems and to stare into the void, have the void stare back and see what happens to their life and all that. But dude, I'm too old for that shit. I really am. I mean, I know you're never really too old to change your life and be altered positively by psychedelics, but I don't fucking have it in me. I really don't at this point in my life. I just don't. I just don't. Yeah, you know, the idea of going, right, let's imbibe this thing and just go, right, I'm going to be in hell for the next 8 hours and it's going to feel more like 3 days. I'm going to be in literal hell, but hopefully I'll come out of it better. What will be, will be. Throw it all up in the air. Like, I can't. I just don't have it in me to do that anymore. I really don't. So if I'm going to trip, I just want to have a nice time. And if some kind of positive change comes out of it, then so be it. But it's not really what I'm there for, which, again, the psychonauts are going to hate. But I don't know. I guess I'm kind of doing things backwards. You know, most people when they're young doing things like shrooms, that's when they have the good giggly times, and they're like, oh, let's just go to a rave on shrooms and have a giggly time, and everything will be colourful and it'll be giggly and it'll be fun. And then when they get older, they learn the benefits and they start doing things in a more spiritual way. Whereas with me, it was like my first shroom trip hit me with this like psychedelic spiritual brutality that was like, oh wow, okay, you've changed my life forever, but fuck doing that ever again. So, you know, now I'm older, it's like I want the giggly times now. I never really got those with shrooms. I never really got the giggly times, so I'd just quite like to have those now, and I have been. So that's been lovely, but yeah, I have found it habit forming. I have found it to kind of stand in the way of life rather than improving life and improving creativity and improving depression and all of this. I've found it's just really become like another chemical crutch, really, another kind of like, ugh, this day is unbearable, sobriety is unbearable, let me do this and escape for a little while kind of thing. That's kind of been my energy with it, which is not really ideal. I mean, obviously you could argue, yes, it's pretty damn harmless substance to be doing that with compared to things you could be doing. It's pretty harmless, it's pretty cheap, it's like you could be way worse. So harm reduction and all of that could be worse. So those are really my thoughts on microdosing. I think that's basically everything I had to waffle about. This is quite a long waffle. I am really tired for some reason. I think it's fucking hot in here and I'm falling asleep, so I guess I'm going to fuck off. But yes, if you have anything to add, be that about tripping generally, be that about shroom strains, be that about microdosing, tell me things. But yeah, I do think from here I'm going to kind of progress on to kind of moderate doses, like not quite a trip dose, not quite a microdose, enough to feel it, but enough to function on and hopefully do creative tasks on. That's where I would like to pitch this at now. So maybe it will still turn into a kind of microdosing thing. I just had to get the whole like, oh, this is psychedelic and fun, let's do this, it's fun thing out of the way first. I don't know. So we'll see where it goes from here. But anyway, thank you for tolerating this rather lengthy waffle. I'm going to shut up and go away and eat my gummy bears now. So bye-bye.